So that being said, Scott, I'm gonna move this segment up a little bit here, and we'll get to another in just a minute. But there's been a lot of talk about the Bengals and wide receivers, and then potentially drafting one. The one that seems to be the best value and the best in the class this year is Mike Williams of Clemson. And if you watched the national championship game, which was a fantastic football game, Mike Williams really shined on Monday night against the Alabama defense. Now, he was knocked out early in the game, kind of got a helmet to helmet. He got a little woozy, but came back in, ended up getting about, I think it was 8 catches, 94 yards, and he did grab a touchdown as well, some of which were just acrobatic, high-pointing, totally beating the defenders on a jump ball, which was great to see. Now, he's not the burner. He can definitely run well, and he kind of has a skill set more akin to A.J. Green rather than just that smaller, speedier guy. But the Bengals need linebacker help. They need pass rush help. They need wide receiver help, maybe even offensive line help. Those are probably their top 4 needs going into this draft. I don't know, Scott, if Mike Williams is there and you see some of the offensive issues, especially in the red zone, and especially, the dry spells once A.J. Green was out of the lineup with injury and Tyler Eifert was out of the lineup with injury. If he's there, do you kind of say, we can't pass this guy up? I mean, this guy could definitely change our offense, especially if Tyler Boyd remains that chain mover guy. You maybe bring back Brandon LaFell. You got a couple of young guys back there. I don't know. Do you think that's a waste of a pick at number 9, or do you think that is something that the Bengals should seriously consider if he's there?
I guess, it really depends on how they evaluate or how high they have him rated. If they have him rated as, yes, this is a top 5 player and he's there, I've mentioned several times before, I'm definitely a best player available guy, like within reason. Obviously, I'm not taking the best punter round one, but, kind of most feel common sense consider best player. If he is the best player available, I think it's hard to pass, especially if there's a big drop between him and the next guy. I think it's really hard not to take him. And I think some people could argue, well, it's kind of overkill because you have Green. If Eifert's healthy, how many people are really going to throw the ball to? You have Andy Dalton. You don't have, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees back there. We don't have the offense that's going to throw it 40, 50 times. But you look at teams that have supported 2 wide receivers at the same time, who had 2 good wide receivers, they tend to be very good offenses. Some of the ones that came to mind to me, and I'm sure I'm missing some, are the Greatest Show on Turf, when you had Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce both getting 1,000 yards. Peyton Manning, I think, had Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison at the same time.
Yep.
The Vikings, when they had Chris Carter and Randy Moss together at the same time. So it is definitely possible. You can, and I think if they did draft him, I would hope the offensive coordinator would not just draft him to say, okay, he's replacing Brandon LaFell, we'll give him a couple balls, but they do something with the offense to, maximize what they have. Hey, we have these 2 tall, phenomenal receivers. That is, we've drafted these people for the purpose of doing this. Not like when they drafted Eifert and then they said, okay, we're just going to play Gresham. Yeah, Eifert, we'll kind of rotate you in here and there. And then at the end of the year, we'll kind of complain we didn't play you enough. If they draft him, I would hope the offense accommodates that. And like you said, watching him in some of those games, like just the ball control, his hands, the way he can adjust, has definitely looked elite. The one thing I kind of worry about, and I haven't watched enough or read enough to really know one way or the other, but there was another guy named Mike Williams, if you remember, 9 years ago at a USC.
I do.
Same, big body, big hands, big touchdown machine, just, elite receiver on a great offense, just phenomenal. Drafted, I forget what it is, 4th overall, 5th overall, back when Detroit was taking wide receivers every year. Totally flopped. So the question is this Mike Williams that Mike Williams, or is he the next Calvin Johnson? And I assume that's obviously what the pro days and the combines are going to tell us. And one thing going in his favor is Clemson does seem to be a wide receiver factory of late. Sammy Watkins, Hopkins, and I think Martavis Bryant all went there last few years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he could very well be legit. And if he is, and you have him rated that high, I don't think you pass on him just because he's a wide receiver.
Yeah, there are some red flags with him. One of which was, I believe, in 2015, he actually suffered what I think is a cracked vertebrae in his neck or some sort of major neck injury, caused him to miss a lot of time there. So that is something that a lot of people will keep an eye on. Obviously, he came out this year and showed that he could stay healthy for the most part and very, very productive. The other thing that probably plays into this is who goes in front of them, because the Bengals probably aren't going to move up from 9. If anything, they will move back and accumulate more picks or stay put. So obviously, it seems as if the 3 guys a lot of people are talking about, there's kind of 4. Jonathan Allen of Alabama, another defensive lineman. Derek Barnett, a defensive end out of Tennessee, who's a good, speedy, athletic rusher. You've got Reuben Foster, who had himself a great game as well for Alabama at linebacker. And then you've got Mike Williams, who kind of seem to all be in that conversation. If my thing is I question, some people think Barnett is maybe the 3rd, maybe even 4th best defensive end in this, depending on who you ask, in this draft. Some people have him number 1, some people have him number 2. But, if the consensus is, especially among the Bengals in their draft board, if he's the 3rd best defensive end, if you're sitting at 9 and you get the 3rd best player at one position, or you have the opportunity to get the best player at his respective position who should be able to help you day one, that's something to think about. It also depends on, if Foster gets picked before the Bengals are on the clock, Barnett and Allen, the same thing. So, I think while a lot of people think wide receiver is more of a luxury pick at this point, you look at, I mentioned the red zone issues. You would then trot out a 6'4" AJ Green, a 6'6" Tyler Eifert, and a 6'3" Mike Williams in formations. That seems to be something that would immediately remedy some of the red zone issues for the Bengals that happened this last year. But the other thing I look at, and I'm gonna be the king of the segue tonight. This is gonna segue nicely into our next topic. But you saw Andy Dalton with, I don't want to say so much lesser talent, but a lot of new faces. And when his stars went out of the lineup, as compared to how comfortable and confident he looked in 2015, if you have these stars out there that command attention and kind of push the defense back a little bit to guard against these deep balls, that's going to give your quarterback a lot of confidence. It's going to help out your running game. And, that's something to think about. Andy Dalton didn't play bad this year, but he definitely wasn't the same guy that we saw in 2015 when he had all the weapons back at his disposal. So, that's something to think about as well. I think if the Bengals go Foster, one of those defensive ends, or Mike Williams, I think all those guys can help you out day one and help you out in different respects. And I think most fans, after the pick is made, if it's one of those guys, they should be pretty happy. What they might not be happy about go ahead.
You mentioned Dalton and Green, and the one thing that's amazing is you watch when Dalton. How often do we see Green's in double coverage? Dalton just chucks it out there because Green's going to make that catch. And Just imagine if Mike Williams is as advertised. Well, now you have 2 of those guys, so you have to double team 2 people because you can just chuck it up to either one of them. And if you do double team both of them, like you said, you've got Boyd underneath or Eifert just sitting there wide open. So it opens a lot of possibilities if your offense is going to be scripted that way.
Yeah, and if you remember the Bills game when AJ Green went down, as the Bengals tried to make adjustments, which if you ask Marvin Lewis, that doesn't exist. But as they tried to make adjustments,
especially halftime,
it's exactly the halftime ones; those don't exist. You saw the Bills; they had a great telestrator, a couple of shots of the Bills defense totally playing within the box and playing up because they didn't respect the deep ball that Brandon LaFell, Tyler Boyd, or anybody else on the field could provide that AJ Green did. So, I don't think it's, while some people just scoff at the possibility and say, oh, that's typical Bengals taking the exciting skill player. I think that could bring a lot of excitement to this offense, really get them back to where they were in 2015 and really provide headaches for opposing defenses next year and really build Andy Dalton's confidence. What fans might not be happy about if they pick at 9, Scott, is if they pick a quarterback at number 9. And you put a very polarizing post up on Cincy Jungle, which, by the way, I mentioned we're live there, so check us out. The title is, Could the Bengals draft a quarterback in the first round of the 2017 draft? And you had a lot of great reasoning and some options. Deshaun Watson is, if you watched him in the national championship game, he played outstanding, took a number of big hits, and just kept coming. He also provides that dual threat as a runner. At times there's some accuracy issues, but the guy came through huge. He threw the winning touchdown with 1 second left in the game, Scott. So obviously the guy knows how to win. He knows how to play. Where were you coming from with this? And how crazy of an idea might it be for the Bengals to look at a quarterback in the first round? Because Andy Dalton is now, what is he, 0-4 in the playoffs. He didn't start the game against the Steelers. Struggles in primetime. And we've seen him, though he's broken franchise records. He's done a lot of great things for the Bengals. He still can struggle at times when his stars aren't out there. So where were you coming from with this article, and kind of talk about some of the possibilities behind it?
Yeah, pretty much the main premise of the article is, you cannot overestimate the value of an elite quarterback in the NFL. The way the NFL is run, you look at the teams that have, just the top end, the elite quarterbacks. If you have one of those, they just make your team so much better. And conversely, if you have one of those and lose them, your team just gets so much worse. They are kind of they pretty much control the game more than anything else. Having an elite quarterback, having a good quarterback helps, obviously. And once you get one of those elite ones, the Aaron Rodgers, the Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning before he retired, you get one of those guys, Brett Favre when he was playing, that that with this guy, you're going to win double-digit games every year. You're always going to be in the playoffs. You have a good chance to make a playoff run. It doesn't matter if the rest of your team is garbage. You're going to have a good team. So, and I think anyone who looks around the league, last 5, 10, 15 years, teams that have an elite quarterback are generally your best teams. A few exceptions, obviously, you can have elite everything else except quarterback, and they can carry the quarterback. But for the most part, you have an elite quarterback. That rights a lot of wrongs on your team. So the point being, I think most of us would agree Andy Dalton's not an elite quarterback. We've had our complaints with him. He was very good last year until he got hurt, obviously. Had a ton of weapons. Eifert was there pretty much all season. Marvin Jones, Giovanni Bernard, A.J. Green. Obviously, he had a lot of appeal throw too. The line did a lot better. He was hardly touched as far as pressures and sacks. Everything went right. The defense was playing really well. All those working around him, he was good enough to get them to 12-4 or 10-2, before he got hurt. But he's not an elite quarterback. So the question is, if you have a chance to get an elite quarterback, one of these, top notch, can't miss, like this guy, if your scouting department, your coaches, everyone looks at this, Watson, whoever it may be, the guy from North Carolina, the guy from Notre Dame, and you'd say this guy is truly an elite quarterback. If he falls to you in the draft, the article is you have to take him. There's just, unless you already have an elite quarterback, you just absolutely have to take the guy. And I would contend that Dalton's not an elite quarterback. And if you think, and I'm not saying one of these guys is, they might be, they may not be. We'll have a better feel, I think, come draft day, how, all the experts and scouting has, they've gone through the pro days, the combines, the interviews. You have a better feel for, are they good, or is this a bad quarterback draft? Is this, a year where you have a Geno Smith, E.J. Manuel type of top prospect? Or is it one of these ones where, you come April and you're like, wow, we have 2 or 3 really great quarterbacks. But if you feel one of these guys is that elite quarterback, you absolutely have to take him. Because even if you say one of these guys, like let's say the linebacker from Alabama, or you were talking about Mike Williams, one of those guys falls you grab him. That's obviously not a bad pick. It's a solid pick. It's a solid player. But getting a great middle linebacker, getting a great, tight end, a great, left guard, whatever, isn't going to impact you the same way that having an elite quarterback is. And you can do kind of use the example of the Aaron Rodgers thing. They had Brett Favre on the roster already. He still had a very good career after they drafted Rodgers, but he wasn't elite at that point. and it made sense. You could do the same thing with, let's say it's Watson. You draft the guy, you let him sit for a year or two behind Dalton. You have Dalton locked up to a very team-friendly deal, so you're not going to be out anything. You're not paying some ridiculous amount of money to him. And then when you're ready to say, yeah, we've had Watson on the team for the last year. He's been practicing with us. Everything we see, he's just wow. He's phenomenal. It's time to move on. At that point, you trade Dalton, and there's obviously going to be teams that are always looking to add a quarterback. And so you're obviously going to get some value if you trade away the guy you have. You bring the next guy in, and if the next guy's elite, obviously everything works out well. Now, of course, that assumes the guy is elite, and he becomes elite, which you don't know. But I think, obviously every draft position is a risk. And if you're sitting there at 9 and someone who you think is the next best, greatest thing at quarterback, I think you have to take that over any other position.
Yeah, it is the most valuable position. And I think Andy Dalton's a very polarizing guy among Bengal fans. Not so much the past 2 years, but definitely from 2011 to 2014. He was a very polarizing guy amongst the fan base. Now, there's a lot to be said with what you just kind of mentioned there, Scott. I mean, you look at who are the teams that always make the postseason. Okay, you got the Patriots. Well, who's their quarterback? Tom Brady. The Colts and/or the Broncos. Who was their quarterback? Peyton Manning. The Green Bay Packers. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. I mean, depending on your thoughts about Eli Manning, the guy's got 2 Super Bowls, whether you think he's elite or not. The Giants are in the mix all the time. Depending on your thoughts on the Ravens and Joe Flacco, he's won a Super Bowl. There's some outliers. There's the pre-Manning Broncos with Tebow and stuff like that, and then the Chiefs, depending on your thoughts with Alex Smith. But I mean, it is the most important position on any football team, really at any level, except for like Pop Warner or whatever. But it is the most important position, and you're not going to be able to win without a very good to great quarterback, and you're not going to be able to win championships without that. It's where it gets tricky is, does 2015 and 2016 show Dalton maybe scratching the surface and maybe approaching some of that greatness as he matures as a quarterback? Or is it, you got to surround him with the talent. He's not going to raise the play of everyone around him. He's going to play well when his stars are out there. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't know. Now, you mentioned in your article, Scott, the 3 top who seem to be the top prospects coming out this year at quarterback: Deshaun Kaiser of Notre Dame, Deshaun Watson of Clemson, and Mitch Trubisky of North Carolina. Do you have a favorite amongst those 3?
From the little bit I've seen, I'd say my favorite would be Watson.
Yeah, I agree.
I've only watched a little bit of Trubisky, and everything I saw, it was shotgun offense, one read, quick pass to the first target, no, going through progressions or anything. Granted, that was part of one game. And everything I've read about him seems to be, he has the upside. He has the tools, hasn't put them all together. He's probably someone who may not do very much for you for a couple of years, and you kind of hope he turns into a quarterback. Kaiser, I'm going to be a little biased only because the guy he replaced is local to where I'm from. Malik, mine just went blank. Malik Zaire.
Yep.
Who is a local kid, kind of just north of Cincinnati area in Kettering Alter. So I was, since he replaced him when he got hurt, and then the coach at Notre Dame never put Zaire back in, I was like, so I've never been a fan of Kaiser because of that. I know it's not a very scientific method; it's more the fandom approach.
No, I mean, it makes sense.
And what I've seen in Watson, I saw that in the Ohio State game. Since I am a Ohio guy, I'm an Ohio State fan more often than not. I wasn't that impressed with him. Like nothing in that. But then when I saw Ohio State play Mariota in the championship game a couple years ago, nothing Mariota did really stuck out. And they were both facing good teams, good defenses, and in that one game that I saw, neither Watson nor Mariota really made you think, wow, this is a top 5 pick. But then you mentioned the Alabama game. That's 2 straight years against Alabama. He's throwing for 400 yards and had 3 touchdowns or something, and had some really nice throws too. So yeah, if you look at based on my very limited samples, I'd have to go with Watson.
I think that's where I would probably go too. I do think that it is a very big long shot that the Bengals would do that. They're kind of in the don't rock the boat mode. I think they view this season as an outlier and not a constant, and they feel that they've found a formula with a quarterback that they can win with, and they probably won't be drafting a quarterback if one of those top guys falls to them. What they would probably do is field calls for trades and accumulate a bunch of picks at that point if one of those guys was to get to them at 9. One thing that does bring a little bit of, I mean, it does sound a little far-fetched on the surface, but as you look into it, as you went very much into detail and good detail, Scott, the other thing that plays into it, and kudos to Waldo in our YouTube chat, is the AJ McCarron trade possibility. And if the Bengals somehow were to kind of throw him out there and say, hey, give us a second or third round pick for this guy, a team comes biting and you've got another high pick, and then one of those guys falls to you, I mean, that kind of provides another interesting conversation there, because you're kind of playing at that point with a little bit of house money because you got an extra pick and potentially an extra high pick for McCarron. And then, who knows, maybe the team then says, this is the best guy available and we got to take him. And that's what we've done regardless of our needs the last handful of years. I just still think they'll probably look at the defensive side of the ball in that front 7, maybe wide receiver. But interesting topic, Scott. And if you haven't checked it out, it's on Cincy Jungle. It's on the front page currently. It's a very good, well thought out article, as all of yours are, Scott. They are very detailed and very very well done.
Well, thanks. I guess that's the engineering background.
It's good. It's good. They were good.
One thing that to mention on just to build on what Waldo said. That is one thing I think the Bengals need to decide on between now and April is you have 3 quarterbacks on your 53-man roster. There's really no reason. They need to make a decision with McCarron and Driscoll. If Driscoll's the guy, they need to trade McCarron. And if McCarron is the guy, he has trade value. He's going to be a free agent. We'll probably discuss that in a future episode, but they just need to make a decision.
I agree with you. And, Dalton, aside from what happened at the end of 15 and his very first start as a professional quarterback, has been a very durable guy, especially with a lot of the read option stuff that he runs, a lot of the goal line rushes that he runs. He's been a very durable guy for the Bengals over the past handful of years. So that does play in his corner as well. And then you sit there and, as you mentioned, Scott, the Bengals have they kept an active third quarterback on the roster when that might have gone to another position that they could have filled that might have helped them down the stretch. But they do need to make a decision between those two guys and see if they really like Driscoll, then maybe see what you get from McCarron and go from there. What do you think? You can get in touch with us in a number of different ways. We're on Twitter at BengalsOBI. We now not only stream live every week on YouTube, you can subscribe to that channel, but now we have finally become so technically savvy that we are streaming live on Cincy Jungle as well, where my written material and Scott's written material, as well as Connor Howe, our other co-host, all of our written material is on there as well. You can also subscribe to our SoundCloud channel. We're on there. You can download us on iTunes. You could also email us some questions or comments that you have about the show at theobinsider@gmail.com. We appreciate the support. We've had a lot of different downloads, a lot of different questions and feedback, a lot of live viewers, which we greatly appreciate. So thank you very much for the support there. And please, if you could, continue to download the show in a variety of different means. We greatly appreciate it.